Hello everyone. Today's talk is about the versatile pianist. And a career as a classical pianist covers many paths. Even those who have distinguished themselves as soloists have been involved in various types of playing throughout their lives, whether it's as a solo recitalist, a soloist with orchestra, a chamber musician, or a collaborative pianist with singers. It's no wonder we're so busy. There's no other instrument that can boast such an extensive repertoire as we have. And there's no other instrument that's capable of playing the amount of notes that a pianist can play. Take, for example, the first line of Schumann's Carnival, Opus 9. Over 200 notes in those first 20 seconds. Most career pianists have also served as accompanists for large ensembles, both vocal and instrumental. And a few have become orchestra pianists, which not only involves performing in the orchestra as an orchestra instrument, but also playing other keyboard instruments, such as the celeste and the harpsichord. Some pianists also are church musicians, and many have the skills to play organ. Now, I've been talking about a career as a classically trained musician. One finds many classical pianists who are also fine jazz and pop musicians. And they have steady jobs with other jazz performers in nightclubs and other jazz venues. Some pianists become accompanists for dance and ballet companies. Those pianists usually are quite proficient at improvising, and they often compose their own music for the ballet bar, and they adapt music to suit choreography for dance performances. Music and movement also require sensitivity to the way the body moves and reacts to sound. There are pianists who work in the theater world as well as coach accompanists for singers and for dancers in musical theater productions. Other pianists use their instrument as a tool to provide music therapy for physical, mental, and emotional issues that challenge individuals. A few pianists have become involved in the training of what's called music wellness. And almost all pianists, classical or other, do some teaching. And for many, teaching is the financial mainstay of their careers. They also give lectures, judge competitions, and organize other events to promote other musicians. Today we have 3 classical pianists, all of whom have been involved in many of the above professions. We're using Zoom to speak to each one about one aspect of their career. And they are all performers, so I've asked them for a snippet of their playing. One of the best-known pianists in the Sarasota area is Dougherty Ross. She's co-founder with her husband, Gerald Ross, of the Artist Series Concerts of Sarasota, and presently serves as Director of Competitions and Outreach. Lee graduated from the Eastman School of Music with a double major in piano and in voice, and her singing career has included performances at Carnegie Hall, Alice Tully Hall, and on the Broadway stage in New York, as well as Queen Elizabeth Hall in London and the Kennedy White House. She has given countless performances as soloist and duo piano partner, as well as collaborations with many well-known instrumentalists and singers. Here we will view Lee performing with the famous singer Indra Thomas in Berlioz's Villanelle from Les Nuits d'été. Hello, Lee. What a beautiful performance with you and Indra of this song. Would you briefly tell us about your background in singing as well as in piano?
Oh my goodness. First of all, thank you for taking the time to let me share, because what I feel is I've been so blessed, truly blessed, to have so much piano and so much singing in my world. And it goes back to when I was 7 years old, was when I started taking piano lessons from a most wonderful, caring teacher, Frances Marsh Bunton, there in Norfolk, Virginia. And she was so complete in her teaching, more than just teaching notes, you know. She made it so full of joy. She also had us have theory lessons once a week, so it was not just notes on the page. You know, it was just wonderful. And from there, well, actually, I'm sure you probably know about those competitions where they come and they have a judge every year. They're the Federation music club things. And there was a judge there that said, you must go and study at North Texas State College with Silvio Chianti. And there I was in Norfolk, Virginia, never having gone west very far. But there I was going to North Texas State College to study with Silvio Chianti, an amazing Italian pianist. And he had me doing all kinds of music making. And meantime, I just studied a little bit of singing lessons there. But the third summer from North Texas, I went to Chautauqua, New York, which is a fabulous summer place to go for all kinds of reasons. I went to study piano and voice, and it so happened that the voice teacher was Julius Hume, and he was a magnificent singer at the Metropolitan Opera. And he said, my darling, you must leave North Texas and come to Eastman School of Music. So I went to Eastman School of Music and studied voice with him, which was wonderful because he was so dramatic and so into texts and what the song's all about and presentation. Meantime, I'm studying piano with Cecile Genhardt, a magnificent pianist and very German. And so I'm playing for her and she says, my dear, you are like a wild pony. I must tame you. So I had to take away some of the Italian excitement and be a little bit more specific. But the joy is I just learned so much from both of them, and I had the fabulous opportunity of being given a performance certificate both in singing and in piano, thus being able to perform with the orchestra there for both. It was great. I left there as a singer because I felt that I wanted to have these texts, these beautiful words to share with people wherever and however. So I had a Fulbright and I went to Germany, to Cologne, Germany, and studied voice there and sang in the opera there. And how wonderful to learn the language. Came back from there having had a magnificent time. I was not playing the piano very much then, mostly just singing. Came back and sang a tour. You folks are probably too young to remember Fred Waring and the Pennsylvanians.
Oh, sure.
I was a soloist with Fred Waring and the Pennsylvanians, and we went to a different city every night, and I got to sing solos with the orchestra and looking out at wonderful people who were enjoying, again, the words. Again, that's so important to me, the texts of the songs. So I did that for a season and then was in New York and said, I really need to be studying voice. And so I ended up having a job singing in Broadway production of My Fair Lady during the days, and, you know, of course, the matinee on Wednesday and Saturday. But meantime, I was studying voice with Rose Bampton, who was a fabulous, fabulous voice teacher and a singer at the Metropolitan Opera. And she, again, was so important in building my understanding of music in general and interpretation, you know, and it was just great to be there. Meantime, while I was in New York, I did have the opportunity to have competitions, and the things that you mentioned about having the chance to go sing at the White House was because of a competition. And to sing at Carnegie, well, that was not necessarily a competition. Anyway, one of them was, but there were opportunities to sing at Carnegie several times, which was so awesome. Just great to be there. As things happen, I was married at the time and had two fabulous daughters born there in New York City. And my husband came home and said, we need to move to Milwaukee, actually, Racine, Wisconsin, but to be out in Racine and then get a job teaching at the university, where then I was using more of my piano playing, because I was teaching singing, but accompanying all the singers as they did their recitals. I was singing mostly until about 5 or 6 years ago. And then as the saying is, to everything there is a season. And the season for my singing was to be closed and to be more of a pianist at this point, which I absolutely love. So I have the joy of having been a teacher in New York at C.W. Post College, and then out in Wisconsin at the conservatory out there, and at the University of Wisconsin. So it's been a wonderful, wonderful life of making music. I have no regrets. I have only thankfulness. So what can I tell you more?
Well, you are a pianist who happens to be a singer, and a singer who happens to be a pianist. And I would like to know how your singing has affected your piano playing.
How singing you almost think of it in the opposite way.
Uh-huh.
How piano playing would affect my singing. Oh, wait, now, which way do you want me to do? How
singing affects your piano playing, because this is basically about the versatile pianist. And certainly there are things that you have learned as a singer that you would not have learned in a piano lesson.
That's very possible. I'm going to tell you again, as I probably have said already, the words, the text in singing. Okay, so if I am so intent on really expressing the words, I learn more and more about shaping phrases, the energy of the phrases, the direction that we want to have, the intensity, the release. And so that then comes to play in your solo piano playing as well. You want to know exactly how you feel about this piece of music, and combine it with what you think the composer wanted said, combined with how you feel you're interpreting what he wanted said. Yeah. So it's poetry. It's poetry.
Mm-hmm. Well, you certainly have worked with a lot of singers, and you've also been not only just accompanying them, but like a vocal coach to many of the younger ones. What does a vocal coach do for those people who don't know what a vocal coach is?
Well, if you're a vocal coach, it depends. If they're coming to you for vocal lessons, to coach them in vocal lessons, that's a different thing as being a piano coach. Okay, so I'm going to take away that they came to me for vocal lessons, which happened over the years and years and years. As they come to coach a song, I love it, because again, if they're not really becoming the text, if they're not evolving themselves, then I can use piano phrases to give them ideas, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Certainly.
And also, you know, there's such a thing as breathing. Breathing both in piano playing, breathing as singing, and when you're going to have that space, when you're going to have the tensions and the release, which is really what life is all about. I have to just say one thing to make sure that I get this out, which I'm going to say, and that is, to me, a singer can only be as good in his performance as is his pianist.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
A singer can want to be making all kinds of shapes, but if that pianist is not making those shapes and directions with him,
Mm-hmm.
it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So, you know, as a coach, in my coaching, of course, for singers, I want to maybe push them along a little bit if they feel like they're just really dragging. But I would ask them about that. What's your intention? I think they need to have an idea of what they want to say with that song. Indeed, they need to know the languages.
Yes.
As a coach, I need to know German, Italian, French,
Mm-hmm.
maybe Russian,
Mm-hmm.
and you need to be able to insist that they have fine diction.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We need to know about, as I said, the breathing, the tension, the release.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get down to their presentation of a particular song. That presentation has to come out of knowing the text so well and becoming that text. I have to share a little story. I'll never forget when I was singing a song in an audience of young people. And I was singing, J'aime tes yeux, j'aime ton front, oh ma rebelle, ma farouche, which means I love your eyes, I love your face, and, you know, I just love. So I'm envisioning this person out there. Obviously, it's an audience, but I don't see the audience. I'm just envisioning this person. I love your mouth, I love your face. And all of a sudden, I see this person going, you thought I was saying it all to him. It's like, oh, I think I better change my direction over here. So again, the singer has to believe in what he or she is singing about. He has to be true to his own identity, his own understanding of the text. And that's what you want to encourage as a coach. Mm-hmm. What do you think about this? Mm-hmm. What are you thinking about this? How do you intend to share it? And then the pianist has to be sure that he's at one with the singer when it comes to presentation, at one with. No way to overshadow, mm-hmm. to push when he really doesn't want to be pushed. That's a temptation for a pianist sometimes. If you feel like the singer's dragging, you want to kind of push it. No, gotta allow that singer to have his own understanding. And as a coach, you insist on his coming to terms with that.
Certainly. Well, one more question I have, and that is, do you have a little story, a brief one, that you could share with us that was sort of a highlight in your career as a pianist?
As a pianist,
yes.
I can only tell you that I absolutely love the opportunity to play. You almost make me cry. It's been so meaningful because now that I'm playing for singers and or instrumentalists, and we can go to schools, we can go to senior citizens' homes, we can go to clubs, and when you see what the music can do to uplift souls, it's just so joyful. You know, if you go into a senior citizens' home and these people are kind of like this, and you play, and all of a sudden they're like, yes. So I'm thankful for, especially for piano now, since I'm, not singing that much, and I feel really so grateful. And I'd say to any pianist, keep it going, because it's so, so, so important to share. There's so many, I had a few quotes. Music is a higher revelation than all wisdom and philosophy. Beethoven said that. Music gives a soul to the universe, wings to the mind, flight to the imagination. Plato said that. Oh. So I encourage any pianist, keep it going.
Yeah. Well, Lee, thank you. You certainly have lived the best of both worlds.
You're right.
I'm thankful. As a singer and pianist, and it shows in the way you play as well as in who you are. And we thank you very much for this opportunity.
My joy. My joy. Thank you.
Gail Berenson is a fairly recent newcomer to Sarasota. She is Professor Emerita of Piano at Ohio University and an active performer both in the U.S. and abroad. Gail is known worldwide as an expert on music wellness issues, and she's played a leading role in developing an international awareness of this vital part of the musician's education. She is in much demand as a performer, clinician, masterclass presenter, adjudicator, author, reviewer, and pedagogy consultant. Please visit her website at gailberenson.com to see her work in this field, as well as some of her performances. Now we will hear the lovely Spanish Dance No. 5 by Granados, performed by Gail on her Bechstein piano. Gail, thank you for this opportunity to speak to you today about music wellness. Well, the term music wellness has become known to many musicians, but it's still relatively unknown to others and especially people who are non-musicians. Would you sum up for us what music wellness is?
Sure, I'd be delighted. First of all, it's my favorite topic to talk about, so I'm happy to share. Let me go back to 2012. At that time, I was asked to create a special interest group on, it was called the Musicians' Health and Wellness Special Interest Group for the International Society of Music Education. So it's an international group, and they joined the whole field of musicians' health. So let me tell you the topics that we came up with for that to deal with at all of our conferences. So the development of efficient and natural technique, injury prevention strategies, healthy practice strategies, diagnosis, treatment, rehabilitation, and recovery from injury, handling stress and dealing with performance anxiety, prevention of hearing loss, mindfulness strategies, health benefits of recreational music making. Recreational music making is for older adults with the focus on enjoyment and less on the product, more on the process. Understanding neuroscience and its impact on music learning, the lesson environment and its effect on the student's self-esteem and desire to learn, the varied uses of technology in the field of wellness, and adapting the instrument to the musician. So you can see it's a very broad, varied set of topics, and actually is important information for every musician and every student out there.
Certainly, there are a lot of topics that one deals with now in music wellness that we've never heard of before. Could you give us a summary as how it's evolved to the present day?
Sure. Well, as you said, neither of us had this as part of our instruction in college. So what's happened now is that all of the professional associations have really stepped up to the plate, and they're filling that gap. You know, I could name them all, but there are so many musical associations that have done it, both nationally and internationally. And this all evolved when Gary Grafman and Leon Fleischer had their injuries. That was focal dystonia, and that brought a lot of attention to this topic. So all these associations have now either sponsored special conferences on musicians' health or special days of sessions within their conferences on musicians' health, or have established wellness committees. I actually established one of the earliest wellness committees for a piano teachers organization, the National Conference on Piano Pedagogy, back in 1989. So it was about the mid-'80s that all of this started evolving. And it's interesting to see how those committees have changed, because the focus back in '89 was on how do we recover from injury. Mm-hmm. And we brought physicians into the process as well. And then the focus was on, okay, how do we prevent injury? Well, that's all good too. And you realize as we move forward, we kept those topics as well. But now we are on how do you maximize performance? So, you know, making performance effortless, allowing you to do whatever your creativity wants you to do, and you have the facility to do it. So that, I think that's interesting. And then the other thing is that the National Association of Schools of Music, the accrediting body for most of the schools of music within the United States and Canada, they mandate wellness as now part of the curriculum. It has to be integrated within the curriculum. So a lot of universities now are offering courses, and I am proud to say that I initiated a course at Ohio University back in 1991. Mm-hmm. So everything is growing, and the number of books on this topic of musicians who are dedicating their lives to understanding technique better, understanding performance anxiety, understanding mindfulness techniques, the books are just growing exponentially. So we've definitely come a long ways within the last 40 years.
Well, I know that you've been involved with this since practically day one, and you've seen countless numbers of people who've benefited from many of these issues, many of these topics. Could you single out a couple or one or two people that you've worked with personally, and what kind of results you got from?
Sure. You know, I think of one of the first graduate students that I had at Ohio University, very, very talented young lady and very, very dedicated. And so, you know, she came for her first lesson and we decided on repertoire that we would work on. And then she went, you know, back to the practice room and spent a week, came back for her second lesson and said, you know, I have this pain in my arm. And I started asking questions of, have you been doing anything different? And what do you think causes it? And does it hurt when you play the piano and all that? And it turns out that she had taken one of the pieces that had a very demanding section, and she had, that section was only about 30 seconds. She had practiced it for 3 hours every day for however many, the 7 days of the week. And so I realized, okay, we've got to talk about practicing strategies and time management and no pain, no gain. That's certainly one of the big things that's changed. We say that to every single student who walks in the door. It should never hurt when you play your instrument or when you sing. So that's another thing. And the other big issue for teachers is to know our boundaries. I am not a doctor. I've taken a number of courses. I've gone to lots of workshops, but I am not a physician. So part of being knowledgeable is knowing when things are beyond your control and when you need to refer a student to a physician. And there are specific guidelines for that, which we all talk about in musicians' health. And a couple of things to say to anybody who has a problem is, and sees a physician, always identify yourself as a musician so that they understand that. And always ask after you get the diagnosis if physical therapy will be useful, because almost always the cure and the ability to regain your range of motion and your facility comes from physical therapy. So anyway, so, you know, we worked this through and she now understands, you know, how much practicing she can do. And by the way, one of the things that I learned from working with a number of physical therapists, practice 25 minutes, 5 minutes of break, 25 minutes, 5 minutes of break, go walk around the room, do, you know, and that, you know, a lot of students sit at the piano for 3-4 hours in a row. And I remember when I was in school, it was a badge of honor to say, I practiced 8 hours on Saturday. That's crazy. If you're really practicing that much, you're probably wasting half of it, honestly.
Yeah, that's right. Well, many of our viewers are pianists and or play other instruments as well. But is there anything you might like to share specifically with them about music wellness?
Sure. Okay, so first of all, vision things. That's a big deal as we grow older. And especially if you end up with bifocals, and even if it's progressives, you know, there's a spot where the vision is shifting. And so that typically is where the music is appearing. So I would suggest talk to your eye physician and see about single vision lenses. A lot of people use that same set of glasses both at the computer and at the piano. That's one thing. Make sure there's adequate lighting. Make sure that you're well aligned. So actually a lot of people who do wear bifocals, you know, they've got their chin lifted in the air so that they can read where or this way. So you want to make sure that everything is aligned properly, that you're not lifting your shoulders, and that your arm is behind the finger that's playing, so you're aligning that way. That you're setting appropriate goals, and that you're having a good time. You know, the whole focus of recreational music making is to have a good time. And I know a lot of teachers who teach adult students. They have what they call soirees. And in the evening, they'll open their house, or one of the students will open their home. They'll perform for one another. There'll be a glass of wine involved, maybe. And, but the focus is on really having a good time and enjoying the music. So I might just mention that a lot of the organizations host webinars online, and resources, articles, Q&A, newsletters, and on a whole range of topics. And when they air live, usually those are available to members only. But once they are archived, which generally comes about a week or two later, they're available to anybody, free of charge. So College Music Society right now has 27 webinars online. They're about 30 minutes in length. And just on a ton of topics. And we've invited physicians and audiologists and eye physicians and all these wonderful musicians, and many of them pianists, but not all. So you can get lots of information. It's a very long website, so I will just say Google College Music Society Musicians Health Webinars, and it'll come up. You want the archived ones, not the ones to come. And one other website I might mention, Athletes in the Arts. For people who've had an athletic background, or there are so many similarities between musicians and Athletes Athletes in the Arts has some wonderful articles that are available.
Well, thank you again, Gail.
My pleasure.
Gail Ofterdinger-Ledgister is also a recent newcomer to Sarasota, where she's organist and pianist at Northminster Presbyterian Church in Sarasota. She attended Westminster Choir College and the Philadelphia Music Academy, where she graduated in piano performance. She received a master's in music history from Temple University and did graduate work in harpsichord at Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music, which was followed by completion of coursework for a PhD in historical musicology from Rutgers University. Gail taught in colleges for 10 years, and she met her first organ teacher in one of these classes. She began substituting in churches in the late 1970s and took her first permanent organist post in 1982. She has been a piano instructor for 45 years and a church musician for 38 years. Gail will announce her selection, which is played on the church's recently acquired Steinway Grand.
This selection is a setting of As the Deer by Martin Nystro, arranged by Roger House.
Hello, Gail.
Hello, Sylvia.
You have quite an extensive educational background from many good music schools and a very active career as a teacher as well as a church musician. I want to know what influenced you to go into church music.
When I graduated with my bachelor's in piano, I wrote a letter to my high school piano teacher, David Sokolov, asking him if he would take me back as a student. At the time, he was teaching at my local community college near my hometown. And as we started lessons, he began working on me. When are you going back to grad school? When are you going? Just go down to Temple University and take one course. So I did, and 3 semesters and 2 summers later, I had a master's degree in music literature. But the semester before I finished, he presented me at the community college in a piano recital, and we did the Beethoven Third Concerto as our final piece with him at the second piano. And unbeknownst to me, he had invited the entire music faculty. So in August, when I picked up my diploma, 2 days later, I got a call from the chair of the piano department. At first, she was at an Episcopal church, so I learned the 1940 hymnal with her. She would slip me onto the organ bench to play soft hymns during communion while she went down front to take communion herself. Then the next summer, she loaned me out to a Baptist church musician who needed his 4-week August vacation covered. And after that, I started subbing in churches. When I moved out to Cincinnati to start a DMA program in harpsichord, I needed some work. I had a scholarship, but I went to the job board. Job board number 1 said, pianist needed for the symphonic choir. So I went, they hired me. Number 2, I saw preparatory department piano teacher needed. So I went, they hired me. Number 3, ballet classes Saturday morning needs an accompanist. So I went and I said, look, I don't know the ballet repertoire. They said, don't worry about it. These are beginners. What can you play in 4/4? Job number 4. I went and it said, church pianist, $50. 1982, my first church job. I went, the choir director hired me. 3 weeks later, we're in rehearsal and she says, I'm retiring to Arizona. You're now the choir director too. Boom, I'm a church musician. And I've almost never not had a job since 1982, consistently in churches in whatever state. That's how it started.
Well, what would you say is the most rewarding aspect of being a church musician?
It gives me an opportunity to accompany, which I love, and also it gives me an opportunity to still teach. I'm teaching parts, I'm teaching musicianship, theory, how to accompany a singer. I have to teach the singers sometimes. So 2 great bennies there.
There's a wide variety of styles of church music, and you have been classically trained. What other styles of music do you prefer?
Point of, are they interesting to play, for me to play? Will they be meaningful? Do they have emotional quality? And will my congregation respond to them? So style, you can find hymns, traditional as well as contemporary songs arranged in jazz, ragtime, souped up spirituals. You can find, there's a wide gamut these days. So I like it all, but you will find me, if I had my druthers, because of my love of harpsichord music, in the Baroque or pre-Baroque. That's my favorite.
Well, you're a fine pianist, and Northminster has this nice Steinway piano now, which must be a pleasure to play. How do you decide on whether to play selections for piano or for organ?
Here, that's easy. The music sometimes dictates to you whether it's piano or organ accompaniment, but you can change up. You can make an organ piece for the piano, you can arrange a piano piece for the organ. Our organ here is not hooked up into the sound system. So since we've been streaming our services since COVID-19, if I were a soloist or a group, you wouldn't hear it on the recording. So my decision is almost always made there that we've got to use piano. Pre-COVID, The choir director would sometimes say to me, "Can we accompany this on the organ?" I'd say, "Sure, I'll adapt it to organ, no problem. We just have to remember that it's not going to pick up well. The only speakers are the onboard speakers and in the ceiling. We can't hook it up into the sound system." Otherwise, if it's a piece like "Oh Holy Night," no, you're going to accompany with organ. If it's a piece like we did the Lord's Prayer early in the summer, and all I heard on the video was the solo voice, could barely hear the organ. So sometimes the choice is made for me. And sometimes I need to be near the choir. If I need to feed them pitches, for example, if it's hard for the sopranos to hear when they come in or what they need to come in, what pitch, I need to be closer. So then it's piano.
Well, Gail, are there any highlights to your career that you would like to share with us briefly?
I thought a lot about this, and rather than focus on me, I'd like to share my Pavarotti story with you. When I was teaching at that community college, the voice teacher was studying with a lady who taught at Temple U, Florence Bergeron, and her studio was a wonderful apartment in Center City, Philadelphia. I would go down with the voice teacher to accompany her, and somehow I got hooked up accompanying other students of Miss Bergeron's studio. One of these young ladies wanted to participate in the Metropolitan Opera regional auditions one year that was being held in Philadelphia. And so we found ourselves walking out onto the stage of the Academy of Music, where the Philly Orchestra used to perform before they built their new home. And I couldn't see well. I could see two ladies and one gentleman, judges, out better suited to this role. Have you tried it yet? Or I see you as Susanna. Have you tried that role? He spent gobs of time with her. So when we left, I asked backstage, who was that? And they said, "Oh, that's Luciano Pavarotti. He's establishing himself at the Met Opera now, and so he's going out on the regional auditions." Years later, in Philadelphia, he established his own competition for young singers, and the top two winners would perform a small role with him as the lead. So what did he teach me? He taught me that you have to give back and you have to pass it on. That's my Pavarotti story.
Well, that's a very nice story, Gail. Well, thank you for joining this session. It's a pleasure to hear you. Well, this concludes our session on the versatile pianist. Thanks to all of the pianists for their performances and their insightful comments about some of the many activities of their careers. And thanks to Dave Berry, our manager at the Sarasota Music Archive, for putting together the final production.